Star Citizen 4.0 is no longer scheduled for Q3 of 2024. And while the new release window of Q4 could mean just a month's delay, many players are obviously hesitant to believe the new date set. After the better part of a decade waiting for this update, it can be difficult to put trust in what the roadmap says. In this video, I'd like to talk about why everyone is so flustered and how this could affect the rest of the year. Bear with me, this video is a bit of a roller coaster. Thank you for coming to my Tomato Talk. You know, no game comparison is apples to apples, and I try to stay away from pitting game development cycles against one another in these videos, but me and my wife have put in well over 700 hours into Civilization 6 since October 2016, and I realized when getting hyped for the new sequel, Civ 7, coming out in February, that we've also been waiting for Star Citizen 4.0 since the exact same month it was released. Now, game development is difficult, it's obvious looking at the various recent game releases, and Star Citizen is trying to do something wildly different with no real foundation before it to build on besides the CryEngine. But the actual physical weight that it's taken to just get to this one major milestone has been a bit tiring. And that doesn't discredit the fact that I've probably had 10 times that many hours in Star Citizen, enjoying myself in a game environment I've been dreaming about for the majority of my gaming life. But ultimately, I, like many others, have been waiting for this environment to take the next step forward. We all know that the 3.x cycle of updates, while they've added gameplay, features, ships, and locations, still haven't built on the fundamental set of features that Star Citizen needs to become the MMO we all want to play. And that's what's frustrating to many players. People, myself included, aren't going to blame the developers for the position the game is in. Maybe marketing and management, but not the developers. I understand the struggle, and as things progress, they also change and call for adaptation. But that doesn't change the fact that communication tells us to expect something over and over and over and over and over again. And reality keeps slapping us in the face. The most important thing to many players in this game is stability, and the great barrier to that stability has always been deemed to be the overloaded back end. Precisely, the fact that only one server controls every instance of the game, which leads to desync, lag, non-reactive AI, and an overall slow server tick rate dictating that just about everything performs poorly at times. FPS, mining, space station services, low flying, all the things. You can imagine then that after years of presentations, graphical demonstrations, interviews, and showcases talking about the coming server meshing in 4.0 that may actually hold the key to finally allowing Star Citizen to play like a somewhat normal game, there is nothing that players could possibly want more than to just pass that milestone and see what's on the other side. Because ultimately, multiplayer Star Citizen is a pretty good time even now if you like mining, salvaging, hauling, or just flying around with friends. But that's only when it's running well. Take every single feature out of the 4.0 update, from new outposts to engineering, to any new ships, weapon updates, or engineering features, even the entire second star system that you would think is the biggest deal to many. The majority of people see these as welcome additions, great gameplay, something good to be added in to try out, but generally more of the same. And you'll likely see this in the comments on this very video. Many players don't consider these new additions to be all that groundbreaking for the game, and that's because they kind of aren't on their own. They're just the next step in a lot of different gameplay elements that comes with the actual groundbreaking part of the game, server meshing. People can meme all they want about Star Citizen players being suckers for ships. I mean, we are. But all that fundamentally matters with 4.0 is server meshing and the promise of better performance in a game that at the current moment is great fun to play if you experience a good stable session without falling through the floor of your own ship. Because despite what folks say, while ships and their sales keep this company alive and able to continue development, it's not what brings in the money long term in my opinion. That comes from a healthy game, an expanding experience, moves towards an actual MMO, and an experience that provides the promise of progress and growth. The ability to take part in the game, not just imagine it. And this experience has improved over the years despite these delays. Object container streaming helped load only parts of the game for any specific player, improving frame rates across the board. The server player capacity took a step up in 3.17.2, creating more gameplay opportunities. Bug fixing, while not solving all the problems, has had some positive impacts on different gameplay loops over the course of time. The rendering engine finally reached a mature state this year, improving lighting, introducing DLSS and FSR, and giving some players better frame rates. And server crash recovery has stopped players from completely crashing out of the game when a server goes down, just making you wait a little bit for a server to spin back up and allow you to keep playing. There have been improvements over the years, but for the most part, they feel like band-aids. And don't get me wrong, just because server meshing is coming in to 4.0 as an actual long-term development of the game that could improve all these things, it doesn't mean everything will be solved right away. After 3.0 took 3 quarters to straighten itself out, 3.18 took a full quarter to become playable, and now 3.24 is spending months in limited testing to get the pain points figured out, CIG should at this point know that 4.0 needs to be at the very least a direct transition to the new system without a degradation in quality. And if they can successfully pull that off, then the following updates of 4.1 and 4.2 over the next half year should offer the chance to either provide additional increases to player capacity or improve the performance of the game. Hopefully both. That would mean, preferably, that the game is in a good state to play by next summer, if the current schedule sticks. But many are wondering why the current schedule would stick. Because at the end of the day, the biggest aspect hurting Star Citizen, as always, are the communication problems. So let's look at the signs of what might happen with 4.0 over the next few months. With 4.0 scheduled for Q4 of 2024, there are several possibilities of what we might see. First, the patch could enter testing immediately after the previous update, 3.24, goes to the live servers. If this happens within the next week of this video releasing, we could see 4.0 and Evocati testing by the first half of September. While nobody yet knows what could happen in this phase of testing, the possibility is there for the patch to progress into the PTU testing phase, possibly even available to everyone by CitizenCon at the end of October. This is the absolute best case scenario and pretty unlikely in my opinion. It would be a huge boon to Star Citizen, ushering in many of the changes shown at CitizenCon last year to player hands before the next convention. This would remove the need to even talk about Pyro at CitizenCon 2024 all that much, and allow everybody to turn their attention towards what comes next, as is the tradition. But that would depend on 3.24 going live, 4.0 even being ready for Evocati, a pretty good Evocati cycle, the underlying database performing well, and no major hiccups to be found at higher scale testing as we go through PTU phases. Anybody who's followed Star Citizen knows that's a pretty tall order. We've seen both long and short Evocati cycles, but with a feature update as big as 4.0, which could be similar to 3.18, 3.15, and 3.0 before it, it's not as likely. This would still abide by a Q4 update release and is likely the earliest that most people figured it would be releasing by June of this year anyway. Yes, it's Q4, but it's also pretty close to Q3 as far as Star Citizen is concerned. Y'all know how they treat their calendars. The next best option for a 4.0 release is for the update to go to Evocati closed testing anytime between 3.24 hitting live servers and CitizenCon at the end of October. This would still allow for discussion to at least begin to move past 4.0 in time for CitizenCon and a possible PTU patch launch at the event itself. While that would still make for a relatively fast Evocati cycle given the scale of the update, it's much more possible than what I said previously. And I think it goes without saying that all of this is assuming the possibility of features being removed from 4.0 and moved into a potential 4.0.1 or 4.1 update in December. While that's a strong possibility, I do actually believe server meshing would be the main limiting factor of this update, not something like charge and drain, engineering, or the new outposts that are supposed to be in 4.0. Finally, it is always a possibility, some would say most likely, that we'll see the 4.0 patch come at the end of the quarter in December. This would likely make players quite anxious as we've had difficult patch releases over the holidays, but CIG could opt to keep 4.0 in the PTU during that time to allow players to still get a smoother live experience. Much like 3.18 went out to everybody in December in the PTU, it didn't actually go live until March of the next year. Ultimately though, as I said earlier in this video, stability is key, and I believe CIG knows this and wants to present us with an as stable as possible 4.0 patch. So we'll just have to see what direction it goes in. Now, I would be remiss to not mention the possibility of this patch once again slipping another quarter behind. It's been 7 years already, what's one more quarter, right? But from the Inside Star Citizen episodes we've seen, to the monthly reports covering the progress to 4.0, and previous Q4 patches, it does seem like the update would at least hit the Open PTU by the end of the year, as I just mentioned. That is to say, 3.18 is the only Quarter 4 patch I can remember that actually missed Quarter 4. But with it being similar to 4.0, it was a major technical patch that led to a delay from December to March of the following year. To be perfectly honest, I don't really have a reason for why that wouldn't happen to 4.0. So there's a lot of possibilities here. But it would make for a big gap between 3.24 and 4.0 from September, we hope, to March of next year. And I would assume everything planned for the update has been built with that new back end of server meshing in mind, thus making a 3.25 patch a little less likely. But we'll have to see. Since CitizenCon, Star Citizen has struggled to capitalize on the greatest hype cycle it has ever seen. Statements made at CitizenCon and in the following December have yet to pan out on schedule, particularly surrounding the preview channel and the new features involved.
Now, without talking specific dates, let's discuss what's being targeted and currently on track for release in just the first half of 2024. Persistent hangars that are arriving with freight elevators, freight kiosks, and the new cargo transaction system. And then outside of vehicles and hangars, there's also a variety of FPS combat improvements coming to the first half of 2024. The weapon wear and misfire systems and charge and drain and even more we'll be able to show you once we return in the new year. There are new player character features coming, like the updates to the EVA system and the personal interaction system. The first half of 2024 is also currently scheduled to see the arrival of our new character customizer with things like tattoos, piercings, scars. Now, you're probably looking at your screen and saying to yourself, what about Pyro in 4.0? Well, don't fret. The things that we just covered are those that aren't too dependent on continuing foundational tech work like server meshing. So we feel pretty confident in targeting everything that we just shared for the first 6 months. Now that said, Alpha 4.0 is currently targeting a summer 2024 release, but that won't mean that you have to wait until then to play it or learn more about it. That's because in 2024, we'll continue doing playtests like the one we just completed, and you'll be able to follow along with its development firsthand on the preview channel. An entire host of additional new features, content, and quality of life improvements like the new quantum travel system, new vehicle HUD and MFD work, resource management, hacking, and much, much more, all being worked on in tandem. The preview channel will let you and us test 4.0 together while maintaining the stability of the persistent universe with all those other great additions we just discussed. And then, in the summer of 2024, two become one, and we can avoid that thing that didn't quite go the way that we'd hoped.
3.23 delayed its most significant addition. 3.24 has struggled to bring true change to the game live just yet, and 4.0 is not happening as expected. The same quiet period of summer we usually see has affected the mood surrounding the lackluster year so far, but communication hasn't helped, especially considering last year's CitizenCon. And ultimately the most important thing this year, server meshing, likely hasn't been as heavily discussed as many of us were expecting. Overall, it's been pretty tiring for fans who are mostly just looking forward to the next big step in this game's development. CIG is trying to build an amazing game, one a lot of people are excited for, and I really don't believe they see a better future in repeating this year after year than reaching a release-worthy project and selling boatloads of cosmetics to a wider audience. But their optics have been pretty bad, and so far this year hasn't done enough to improve. Keep an eye on what happens as 3.24 goes to the live servers over the next couple weeks and as we approach CitizenCon, because more than the messaging and communication, it'll be the attempts to move 4.0 into testing, or the lack thereof, that should set your expectations. As always, don't believe until you see, and if you enjoyed this update on the progress of the game, want to stay further up to date, or just want to know what's going on with the feature development, you can subscribe here. You can also check out my second channel for podcasts, deep dives into the monthly reports, dev updates, and weekly news drops, and check out Space Tomato Plays for some gameplay content. Finally, if you appreciate this coverage and want to support our continued effort to explain Star Citizen's development, cover other games, you can become a YouTube channel member or a Patreon member down below and get exclusive videos every month. Like my latest this week looking at the time sinks of Star Citizen, why they exist, and how they're being minimized. You'll also get access to my live podcasts, behind the scenes content, and possibly your referral code in our referral randomizer under every video that can get you extra credits, ships, and items in the game. Whatever you choose to do, thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something new in it, and I'll catch you in the next.